nothing comparing to do a myop of 25 degrees with the macula pacta or something like that, and a hole in the middle, and PVR.
Okay, Lukan, pass the video. It's time to start. I will salute every one of you then after the video. Go ahead, Lukan.
Oh, I don't have it prepared, the video here.
Okay.
So,
You're not ready. So can I go ahead?
yeah.
Okay, so good morning, everyone. Thank you for being with us in another webinar from BORIS Cinema Productions. I'll start as always from west to east, saluting each one of you. So first one, good morning, America. How are you, Christopher Riemann? Thanks for being with us.
It is great to be here. Thank you for having me, my friend.
Thank you. Second, bom dia, Brazil, my lovely country. Hudson Nakamura, how are you?
I'm okay, 100% here. Everything is all right. I'm listening that the temperature in south of our country is pretty cold. It's pretty chilly, but it's okay here. It's sunny.
Thank you. Buenos dias, Argentina. How are you?
Hello, thanks for the invitation. Very well, I'm waiting this webinar. Very cold here. Very, very cold.
I know. Bona tarde, Catalunya. Bem-vindos, Carlos Mateo. Como estás?
Oh, nice. Your Catalan is pretty good. No, I'm fine. Thank you for having me in this webinar with this bunch of perfect surgeons. Thank you very much.
Thank you for being with us. Masa al-Khair, ya Masar. Ahlan fik, Hassan Mortada. How are you, my friend?
Ahlan bik. I'm fine. Thank you for the opportunity. It's really an honor to be among these distinguished surgeons. And greetings from Egypt. It's summertime now. I was supposed to be on the beach, but I have to work.
Thank you for being with us. Kalispera, Elada. Carlos Irsate, my friend Athanasios Nikolakopoulos. Welcome.
Kalispera. It was always nice. I had the same problem with Mortada. I had to be in the office, but I decided to go to the beach. I mean, exactly the opposite. That's why Mortada is so famous. And I'm asking. But thank you for inviting me. It's a great honor to be between those great people and be at the beach at the same time.
Thank you. Now, Japan, where it's very late. Konbanwa Nihon, Yokozo, Yusuke Oshima. Genki desu ka?
Hi, thank you. Thank you very much for including me in this very great team. So your Japanese is very nice. Yeah, right now it's 9 p.m., a little bit later, but still very good to get the presentation here. Thank you for your invitation.
Thank you for being with us. And last but not least, my partner, co-organizer and brother, Lukan Mishev, Dobar den, Bulgaria.
Bon dia, Gustavo. I'm happy to co-host another meeting with you, and I'm looking for an exciting meeting.
Okay, perfect. So we don't want to lose any more time. Our first speaker will be Hudson Nakamura from Goiânia, Brazil. He is one of the greatest surgeons here in Brazil. He works at the Eye Bank in Goiânia, which is in the middle of Brazil. Hudson, don't forget to unmute your microphone and go ahead with your presentation.
Okay, nice to be here. I'm starting to share the screen. And this is a pretty interesting case of a patient with retinal detachment. I'm going to start it off now. Can you see my screen, Rob?
Yes.
Now?
Yes.
This is our city, Goiânia, here in Brazil. We are at the Eye Bank Foundation. We are presently here now, and this is a case of severe PVR retinal detachment. Pretty tough case. I started the case doing the inverted vitrectomy. The patient had this huge retinal detachment, and we were not able to see whether the retina would anyhow attach because it was so detached and with too much PVR. And as you see, I had to relieve all tractions from the retinal periphery. we had fixed folds, we have a lot of anterior PVR shortening of the retina, and so I didn't quite know whether we would be able to attach this retina beforehand, because as you see, it was kind of like a funnel type, and the retina was not very mobile. You see, it's still stuck at the retinal periphery. I was afraid of trimming too much and doing too much retinotomy, and then I could have the retina rotate, and then my task would be very difficult to go on. But then I started to relieve the tractions, and as you see, you have too many cysts in the back of the retina there, and the retina is starting to get mobile, and I'm doing some subretinal work to remove RPE cells from the subretinal space, and the retina is getting, more mobile now, and I'm getting more keen at doing more things here. I could have probably given up at this time, but I think we could probably have a pretty nice case. So I continued with the vitrectomy, and now when I went back to the retina, I saw some bleeding, So this is an intraoperative complication, so I had to get rid of the blood. The blood was subretinal, pre-retinal, and also over the optic nerve, so I had to spend quite a few time to remove all this blood. Otherwise, I could probably follow with the PVR and make it the surgery not feasible and the post-operative period as well. But then here I started to use the cautery. I'm dealing with retinal periphery now. We had more bleeding, but now the cautery goes on, and we did a lot of cautery at the retinal periphery. But now I can see that the edges of the retina are pretty flat, so the case is getting better. So I'm wasting some time here to do the cautery, and now I'm inserting the PFO to attach the retina. And for my surprise, the retina was not so bad now. I had the retina attached up to the periphery, no fixed folds at the macula. The periphery was pretty flat, and the macula, the retina was pretty good looking. Now I started doing the laser, and the laser was taking very well. I did 1, 2, or 3 rows, actually 3 rows, very linear around the retina to get it stuck. And for my surprise, I was changing the outcome, because at the beginning you saw the retina so bad with so many fixed folds. I couldn't actually know whether it would attach or not. But now it's attached. We did this 360-degree laser, and we are starting now the PFO silicone oil direct exchange. I prefer not to use the mechanical system, so I get it manually. So I insert the fluorocarbon, the silicone oil, and then remove the fluorocarbon, and see the retina looks pretty good, amazing view. And you see, if you look at the macula only, it seems to be quite normal. So it was tough, but ended up well, fortunately. So that was my case, and I'm happy we could get this done, because when we start the surgeries with cases like that, we think, well, we might stop. It might not work. If we do too much retinotomy, we might get the retina rotated. But nothing happened, and it was pretty well attached. And we have so many complications out of scleral buckles, out of so many inflammations, and PVR out of holes, and RPE cells and displacements, and but this went okay. Thanks a lot.
Congratulations, Hudson. Very difficult case. I want Hassan Mortada to comment it, please.
Thank you, Hudson, for this wonderful technique. But if I were in your place, I would do it in the reverse way. So I would start from the disc posteriorly, staining, trying to remove the epiretinal membranes and the internal limiting membranes. So it is actually a peeling of the internal limiting membrane starting from the disc and moving to the periphery. Because I strongly believe that removing the island is crucial in these cases. It is the scaffold for reproliferation. If I started, you may have rotation of the retina, folds. If I was seeing well, there was a fold crossing over or coming over the optic disc, and this means that there is still traction in this area. So briefly, I would start from posterior to anterior. And if I need a retinotomy, then I would do it as the last step in the operation, not at the beginning of the operation. So I may deal with this case differently.
Yeah, but because we removed all features and the macula started to look okay, so I went ahead for the retinal periphery, the peripheral work, because you saw this anterior PVR, we didn't have much to do unless we did retinotomy. But then I was doing the retinotomy progressively. I started 90 degrees, 180 degrees, and I was looking at the retina and trying to avoid any rotation as well. And then after the periphery, I'm very familiar when I use PFO. After using PFO and PFO inside the eye, I do an exchange, even though the retina is detached, the air fluid exchange, and dye with the Brilliant Blue, and then I could look at the ILM, but I didn't think it was necessary to remove it because I used the PFO, the retina got flattened, and the macula looked pretty good. And I've been following this patient so far, and his retina is pretty attached and with no PVR, and it's almost 5 months, and it's time to remove the silicone oil. I agree with you that we could probably have to start anything from the core vitrectomy, but I did it macula, but then I had to move ahead to the retinal periphery because of the anterior PVR.
Okay, before we move ahead, Chris, 30 seconds.
So 30 seconds. I think that for me, I agree with Hassan. I think I might have put in some dye. Here in the US, Brilliant Blue is a little bit difficult. I would have put in ICG. Then let it sit for a little bit, and then I would have put PFO in under the ICG. I agree, it's sometimes very difficult to peel ILM when you have a total retinal detachment. But I would have tried to reattach probably peeled ILM, because the visualization in this case was excellent. Peeled ILM off the macula, and usually you can get, when you peel the ILM, you'll get a little finger of PVR that's extending posteriorly. You can get that little finger at the edge of the ILM peel and then use that to catch the anterior PVR. I'll always try that, and if I can't do it, if I can't get the peripheral retina to lie down by removing traction, then I'll proceed with the anterior retinectomy. But I'll always try a posterior peel first, and peeling with forceps. And if I can't relieve track, well, then we move on.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. For our next speaker, Gastón, please go ahead. It's yours. For those who don't know and are watching us, Gastón was my fellowship professor in Buenos Aires, and he is one of the best surgeons from the new generation Argentina. He organizes Retina Extrema. Gastón, go ahead.
Okay, you see the, are you seeing?
Yes.
Thanks for the invitation to this webinar called Complicate Retina, and also thanks to Gustavo and Lukan for the invitation. I will show you my learning curve in 27 gauge. In the past, we used drive cards, and today they are this motorized beauty. We went from conventional surgery to 20 gauge, 23, 25, 27. And often the most difficult is to adapt to changes. Here I'm using the Alcon Hyperbit that I think that it's a very good thing to use, and we have 2,000 cuts per minute and dual pneumatic technology. And also in this video I'm working with constellation and in geometry. Here we can see the retina detachment. In a young patient, in young adult patient, the highlight management is the key. I use triamcinolone is mandatory in young adult patients. Here we can see the strong adherence, very, very strong adherence because of the age of the patient. I highly recommend to use chandelier in this kind of patients. Why? Because if you see better, you can work better, and also better for the recording quality. We have here we're using the brew. I usually take the retinal tear. I think that is very important. The younger the patient, the greater the adherence of the highlights. Here we can see how we are going to extract highlights. But the problem in many cases is that many times it is impossible to extract it entirely, because with each maneuver we can generate new retinal tears. So we must be careful. I usually use the finest loop for multiple things, like releasing blood clots or releasing highlights in extreme cases. Here we are aspiration of the subretinal fluid. Here we're doing the fluid air exchange with aspiration of the subretinal fluid. The key of these cases is the hyaloid. I also tried with the revolution handle with a match grid tip to try to separate the hyaloids, but in some cases it's impossible. Here we can see the complex extraction of the hyaloid membranes. Here you can see it with the revolution handle. I tried everything in this case. Then I will put silicone oil. Here we can see the highlights in some part of the retina. Also with brusher. Here we have active aspiration. We're going to do the laser. When the retina was applied, I put silicone oil. And then I will take out the trocars, and we can talk a little of the 25 valve trocars. What are the benefits of 27 gauge? Less post-surgical inflammation, reduced post of scarring, and improve incision closure and accelerate visual recovery, also the patient comfort. Now we're going to see images of the post-op. We do the post-op OCT, and also I want to show you the dual blade design with continually open pore reduced fluid turbines that in this case will be very useful. And also, as we increase the number of cuts with a dual blade design, we increase the vitreous flow rate, the peak traction force, and the bevel tip design facilitates improved access to Jesus plane. I think that technology is a very good tool, and today's 25 and 27 gauge are more resistant, more efficient to their predecessors from previous years. Thanks for the invitation.
I'll jump in here. That was a beautiful case, Gastón, a beautiful case. I agree with you. I think the 27 gauge vitrectomy, especially with the hypervit platform, is a very powerful, very precise tool. I think the performance of the 27 gauge dual blade cutters are at least as good as 25 gauge single blade cutters. The interesting thing about this case, I have gray hair, so I'll just, I'm an old, tired, fat guy. And in these young cases, sometimes you get in, this ended well, and bravo for a wonderful surgery, but in these young cases, sometimes avoiding the vitrectomy altogether and doing a primary sclerobuckle is a very nice way to fix them. So in a young primary retinal detachment without a posterior vitreous separation, I'll usually start with a primary sclerobuckle and skip the vitrectomy unless I need it.
Thank you, Chris, so much. Yusuke, your opinion, please.
I quite agree with Chris' opinion. Even I'm the pioneer 27, I don't like to use it with the young patient, especially the young patient without PVD. The young patient, they create PVD very difficult, even with 27 or any other instrument. You need to take care. The primary case, the young patient, the first line, even don't care about regardless young surgeon or old surgeon, the primary buckle is the best way as the first line to treat just a young patient, I think.
Good morning. Yes, I'm agree with your opinions. That can be another approach. Sometimes I do sclerobuckle, but in this case, I don't think like an option. Perhaps it will be a good option in this patient also because it has two retinal tears, but the problem that the retinal tears were at different place and at different height. So if I do a sclerobuckle in this case, perhaps I would need a future vitrectomy, but it's okay. I agree.
Carlos, Mateo, your opinion, please.
Two things for me. One, I agree totally with the sclerobuckle. I think in this bunch of surgeons, I am who do more sclerobuckles combined with vitrectomy in the majority of cases. Then, I agree that this is up for primary sclerobuckle. The second thing I want to say is that, wide field lights are not very good to see the vitreous, are very good for recording, but not to see the vitreous. And the third thing is that if you change to silicone oil in an eye with you leave part of the posterior hilot attached, it can be a mess. It can contract, and then it's very difficult to remove after. If you can't not remove the posterior hilot, don't use silicone oil because you're dead. It will contract, very difficult to manage, and many breaks, and this is the only thing. But nice surgery.
Thank you, guys. So let Lukan, 30 seconds.
Yes, I want to comment about vitreous visualization and wide field illumination. We're used to use only triamcinolone about that, but in recent surgeries I tried the fluorescein, intravitreal fluorescein with modified Ingenuity digital filters. You can see the peripheral vitreous like glowing in the dark. And not only the surface of the vitreous, which you can see with triamcinolone, but you can see all the stroma of the vitreous up to the retina. So you can clean everything with wide field viewing illumination.
I don't know I don't know how you take the pressure of the patient before the surgery, but if you put drops of fluorescent drops in the eye to see the pressure, you will have fluorescent in the vitreous, and it will help you just to avoid to inject fluorescent in the vitreous cavity. You will have it from the drops.
Yeah, but you need at least 6 hours for that. There are studies which are showing that. So inside the vitreous, if you use low concentration, there is no danger at all.
Go ahead, guys. Athanasios, it's your time, please.
Yeah, I have to wake up first. Okay. Yeah, old people get a snooze. First of all, I like very much the presentation of the young guy that has silicone oil. And I also like very much the new instrument from Alcon. Unfortunately, in Greece, the Alcon says that because we are in a crisis situation financially, we cannot afford to have this double blade thing. But in Argentina, you don't have a crisis, okay?
We live in continuous crisis in Argentina.
Oh, because they say that. So I'm going to ask them to bring me one of those because, from Argentina, okay? I'm just complaining as usually, old people do that. So back to something that I want to discuss with every one of you if I can, because an observation I made, and this is, I'd like to mention some complicated retinal detachment that people think that they are simple, straightforward detachments. And let's go back a little bit to the vitreous base anatomy. You know that the distance is 3 millimeter and from one side and 2 millimeters from the other side, so from the aura. And the special thing about the vitreous base is that it extends in this area, but these fibers are very difficult to disinsert during surgery, and they extend radially towards the vitreous gel for several millimeters. So the vitreous base is a very important issue for our surgery. But what about posteriorly inserting vitreous base? It's an insertion of the posterior haloid membrane being located posterior to the vortex base. And it can be very tough to read, and redetachment rate is much higher in these cases. I found myself, when I found out how difficult it is from one case that I'm going to show you, and I call it zipper syndrome, because there are multiple tears in one meridian in a retinal detachment without PVR. It looks like a simple detachment. And also, you can find them in an A-touch retina. You don't have to go only to the tears. There are tears in the A-touch retina. And all of them have a posterior base insertion, and they give the impression of a continuity that acts like a zipper that can open all of them together. So it's a multi-hole future giant tear. You can see in my picture now here, what am I calling this posterior base traction, that it is 360 degrees. And the first case we did was with the Ingenuity in 2016. Unfortunately, I cannot show you this 3D video because I don't have it. But it was a row of tears, 360 degrees. And then we did a video on this that looked very, very simple. And I can show you now. Looks like a simple vitrectomy that has some superior tears. And you can see that the nice mobility, half of the area is detached, half of the area is A-touch already. And then we found ourselves to the periphery, trying to clean as much as we can the vitreous from the detached and A-touch retina. It's a main goal that we have to do, every one of us, if we want to have it. And then we found this. With like a small piece of blanket, 360, and no matter how much we use the cutter, how much you decrease or increase the cutting speed or whatever, it doesn't come in. It's not cutting, and you can see it lively how difficult it is to remove this thing. You cannot pull it. Don't try to pull it. You'll pull the retina. You cannot cut it. And then we found something that there were tears 360 degrees around the eye. And I don't want to be particular on that because I have the next step of the operation in another small video. And you can see that in the area of A-touch retina, there was a series of multi-hole in the same exactly meridian, one after the other, like a train. Attached hole, attached hole, attached hole. And I had to do some laser on them. And you will see that there was this detachment with a very ugly hole there that we usually drain through the hole and engage and inject air in order to survive from perfluorocarbon to be less expensive. And we tried to flatten it. And you see inferiorly, we had already done a lot of laser on A-touch retina, and then we flattened this with air, and we used gas exchange to change that. So what are the thoughts behind that? The thought is that vitro saving, it's a much more difficult and there's a much higher redetachment rate in these cases due to tear opening from the traction that we cannot remove. Zipper treatment, if we recognize that, because we go to the periphery and we find this 360 orientation, a simple primary vitrectomy is not enough. I agree with Mateo for this. 360 laser might be a rule in those cases, but, and I want to insist that, it might be very useful to have a 360 buccal indication because they are all in the same place. Nothing is anterior or posterior. It's like soldiers one after the other. And sometimes I would think of silicone oil or C3F8 even in cases when we don't have TDR. These are the only cases that I might use that. We had 26 vitrectomies with this indication as soon as we found out there is. 13 have more than 4 tears, 11 have multiple tears, in A-touch retina also, and all they give you the impression of an incomplete giant tear. And you know, our master, Makime, used to say progress comes from doing the unconventional. So unconventional is becoming conventional in this case and with a buckle. I always take advantage to tell you that most of you are teachers and connected to Thessaloniki Retina Summer School. And we have a motto saying that before you start anything, learn how to finish it. And I would like to remember always our founder and friend and great surgeon, Cesare Porlini, because I always say that you are dead when the people forget you. So I don't want to forget Cesare, so it's a co-organizer, and you can see Riemann explaining very simply with 2 sketches how to suture a lens. And the technology of the artificial eye training is very important, and we use bionicle eyes. And here you can see the setup with extremely good surgeons sitting up and through the ingenuity. And we have also in the training camp, we have also the OCT, the training OCT. And this is the setup we have. And it's very much attributed to you that you're coming, like Cunning, like Riemann, like everybody else who's coming here and do it. Thessaloniki, it's a beautiful city. We changed that to October 26 to 28, 2020 to train people. And imagine we have 36 of you training 30 people. But we have a lot of fun all together, and you have to start young in order to become old as we are now. And this is my son and my daughter trying to learn how to do this. Thank you very much for accepting me to this phenomenal group.
Thank you, Athanasios. This was really nice. And for those who are watching us and haven't been there yet, I really recommend going to Thessaloniki. The mood is amazing between surgeons, the students, the city, and Athanasios is a great host, the best you can have. I really recommend it. So let's talk about the case. Who here has experience with buckle? Because this moderator doesn't have, I want to listen to you. Mateo, of course you. You are muted.
Yeah, absolutely. Athanasios is a great surgeon. He's a very, has a great experience doing peripheral vitrectomy. But, as he said, it's not that easy to remove the posterior vitreous base. It's not that easy, and you can promote breaks, and you have to, to be very, very, skilled to try to find any small break you perform during this, radical. This doesn't exist. Radical vitrectomies. Then, I fully agree that in this case, I do it in all cases, but I really agree that in this case, a buckle is, a must to avoid, to promote breaks, and to help the retina to be retouched.
Any contrary opinions? Anybody has the balls to oppose Carlos Mateo? I'm curious.
So it's
Lukan,
hard to oppose.
you are lefty.
It's hard to oppose somebody when he's right. But I won't say that in this case it's a must. I think that Athanasios was 100% right. When you're shaving and shaving and shaving, and you see that anomalous posterior vitreous base insertion, and you see, I love your term, the zipper phenomena, because you see all these little tears, and the more you pull on them, you can end up with a big, they'll just coalesce into one big giant retinal tear, and it gets very ugly very fast. When you find yourself, if you can shave and get in these cases, but if you can't get the traction off, instead of pulling, okay, push from the outside with a buckle, support that break with a 42 band all the way around. And it can sometimes avoid the drama of the oil. I think that in this case, I'm not sure if I would have put on a buckle, but I would have been thinking about it very hard.
Yeah, and the other thing also that we have engineers here, so you invert the vectors when you have the buckle. So the effect is the opposite. It's gonna help you something. Lukan, you raised your hand.
Yeah, I just want to add, albeit I'm against scleroindentation, I want to remind that Živojinović years ago used to put prophylactic loose 360 sclero buckle in all his cases, and his claim was that he creates a new oral serrata. So this is the same here, and I completely agree with Athanasios.
Listen, you are very young to know Živojinović.
But my mother knows him.
He didn't exist.
I didn't exist, yes.
I'm sorry to say that I was trained with radio in 1983. So
I wasn't born yet.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So we have a long discussion on this issue, but you have to remember one thing: we didn't have wide angle systems then.
Yes.
So we can see only 30 degrees inside the eye with a contact lens. So the real reason is first that he used 1.5 millimeter buckle, which was not a sponge, it was a silicone tire, round tire, which he bought from mechanically produced, and it was bought in 5 meters, 6 meters length. So it cost nothing. So the cost effect was nothing. And the whole idea is to bring the periphery to the center to be able to view the periphery, because otherwise you couldn't do scleral depression, you couldn't do anything with 30-degree contact lens. When somebody asked him why you're still using it after many, many dying in Retina, he told me in front of me, of course, this is a personal experience, he told me, now it's something like a voodoo. It takes me 5 minutes to put it, because he put it under the muscle without suturing it. You just make a last suture, yeah, just 360 degrees, and push it a little bit just in order to be able to see the periphery. And just because I think it's nice to remember the history, it's nice to remember children, it's nice to remember Relio, because Relio was the one that we're supposed to say thank you for whatever we're doing, and we take it for granted now. We take for granted PVR, we take it for granted wide angle, we take it for granted removing all the traction. But he was the first talking about that. And if I would like to go back a little bit about my case, I would like to ask you, do you have a similar experience with the posterior base in the continuous steering, and you have to be especially careful on that? Is it a special indication or is it my mind? Because
these are very, very bad cases, very bad cases. You try to pull the posterior hyaloid to the anterior part and you break the retina. And you make one break, another break, and you say, what are I to do next? And then
you get desperated.
Yeah, you know what I'm doing now when I see a case like that. When I see the patient and he has 360 degrees in the same meridian, I put a 3 millimeter sponge around it before I start vitrectomy with my illumination pipe. I don't use the indirect anymore. I use the illumination pipe because and I make a buckle 360 degrees. And sometimes if I drain it a little bit by accident while I'm putting the suture, it stays flat and I don't need to do vitrectomy. It's crazy. It's so simple to do that. 360 degree, 3 millimeter buckle, 4 sutures, and that's it. And so it's not that it's a new identity that it looks simple when you have a partial vitrectomy in one quadrant and you say, I'll fix it in 15 minutes. But I would like to ask the people who are attending to that to be very, 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 very much careful when they have this zipper syndrome. I would like to put it back and say that don't take it easily. And with Mateo, and we agree with that in everything. And I would like to ask also Ogura, who is a specialist in vitrectomy, doing everything, incredible thing, if he have the same idea. He has seen the same cases. Or Mortada, who's doing hundreds of cases. Do I have your opinion on that? If this is existing or it's in my mind?
Hassan, you are muted.
Oh yeah, very nice case. And I like doing buckles. I do buckles a lot. You know, we did years ago with Dr. Diveni from Canada, my preceptor there, and Dr. Lam. We did a work on the square buckle vitrectomy altogether, and we increased the likelihood of having the retina attached with not too much PVR. Remained after doing the 2 procedures at a time, because you remove the RPE cells and many other things. So I like using the buckle because the buckle, if you do a 240 band, for example, in the retinal periphery, especially inferior, and unless the retinal detachment and the PVR is so posterior, if you do that from the vitreous base, very peripheral there, and then you do vitrectomy, you have indentation, and then the likelihood for the retina, for the inferior retina especially, to get attached is a lot better because you have this 90 degree from the band and the retina, like the retina ends, and you have a buckle, and so the buckle supporting the retina, especially inferiorly. So very many people don't like doing buckles anymore, but I like and enjoy it, and it works, at least in my hands.
Thank you, Hudson. And we have 30 seconds for Hassan now because we have to keep the schedule, guys. Sorry. I know you're muted, Hassan. Sorry. No? You have to unmute yourself.
Okay.
Now, yes.
This is not an uncommon finding. And as Athanasios said, it is a project of a giant retinal break. And it is due to the circumferential contraction along the posterior border of the vitreous base. Although I don't like to put a buckle in every case, but in these cases, I would prefer to put a buckle. But I did not see Athanasios doing a scleral indentation, because if you indent the sclera over this vitreous or membranous vitreous, you can have it, you can approach it with a probe. So it should not be left like this, because if it is posteriorly located, then where are you going to put the buckle? So we have to relieve some of the traction from inside. My objection on the buckle is that the location of the buckle. Where are you going to locate the buckle? Because these posterior border of the vitreous base are usually posteriorly located. And if we remember the rules of the buckle, you have to support to put the buckle to relieve the traction. And not anywhere. You cannot put the buckle at the equator, because usually in these cases, the circumferential contraction is posterior to the equator. And it is seen in myopic patients. So I would put a buckle, but at the same time, I would do a scleral indentation, bring this area of the vitreous to the probe, and you can shave it with the probe after stabilization of the posterior retina with PFCM. So it is not impossible to shave this vitreous. It is possible by doing deep scleral indentation, but as you all agreed upon, I would put a buckle in these cases, although the location of the buckle is not theoretically agreed upon.
Very good comment, Hassan. Thank you so much. Sorry, guys, we have to go forward, okay? Our next speaker is our great friend, Yusuke Oshima from Japan. It's a great pleasure to have you, Yusuke. Go ahead.
Well, we'll share you some case here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Well, I prepared several cases, but because of time limitation, I only show 2 cases here. Just wait a moment. This is a PBR case. And here, this patient is around 6-8 years old guy. Initially, visited my practice with long-standing detachment, as I showed this right upper panel. The visual is 0.1, 2200, but they refused to do surgery because they have severe hard work. So just 2 weeks after, he came here with hypotony and a very severe great detachment, like shown here, and visual acuity decreased to the 2400. And we tried to do the surgery to the patient. And because the tear is not identified before the surgery, so I need to do the perform vitrectomy to find out the bricks and remove our visual. And unfortunately, this patient is osteohyalosis. So as you know, most of the patient without PVD, so it maybe look like very easy, but actually maybe a tough case. So here usually in this case, I prefer to remove the anterior capsule contraction like this way, to keep the visual field. And you see there's very severe detachment, cord detachment. So initially input the one and infusion, and then try to use the external drainer, use the tropical cannula. And then you can see we can extend the space for intravitreal vitrectomy. And then you can see the PVD I created with the 25 gauge further. Personally, I prefer the 27, but in such a tough case, I still prefer use the 25. I need to perform some special manipulation at the peripheral area. So because the fragility of 27 gauge, and especially the case with PBR under PBR, I still prefer use the 25 gauge. The key point in this case, you need to remove the membrane as much as possible. I show here, even though I have not yet found out any breaks here, but still find there are several layers of the membrane. And I need to carefully to shape the membrane. As you know, this is a 10K 25 gauge hyperbit cutter. It is very useful to remove the membrane as much as possible. Previously, in such a case, I think you use the forceps. Right now, I prefer use most of the membrane. I only use the cutter to remove the shaping. But in the very special location, I still use the bimanual technique to remove the membrane. As shown here, there are several membranes. Even they already create the PVD, the very thick membranes still are attached to the retinal surface. So this case may be some inflammatory reaction already occurred in this case. As shown in the peripheral area, there's also some vascular abnormality. So it's not simple primary attachment case, I think. But anyway, I'm not sure. I didn't know the origin, but we need to gently and carefully to remove the membrane to avoid any region breach. Most of the case, I prefer use the resite with the wide on-beam system because very clearly can see the surface of the membrane. There are several layers, as you shown here, need to remove the membrane. And finally, I can remove the much as possible. So not the same, quite same the last case, the Athanasios showed, but this case also the very severe attach peripheral between surgery area. I didn't remove the sigmoid first. I performed remove the membrane underneath the sigmoid first, because if you remove sigmoid first, you will encounter total detachment. So just only a sample about the subsigmoid perforation so severe. So my personally, I don't like use the sigmoid as the first choice. Of course, in some case, it cannot perform the face down, a spine position, I have no way use the sigmoid. Otherwise, I still prefer use the gas as the first choice. How about other surgeon? If you encounter some substitution or perforation, how can you overcome this complication?
That's a beautiful case, Yusuke, a beautiful, beautiful case. I get a lot of consultations from other practices as well, and I found that two-port vitrectomy under oil without removing the oil acts as a third hand and holds everything in place. It's a very nice way to do things, and you can take a very complex surgery and make it pretty simple. You can even apply dye under the oil bubble if you use a soft tip to just gently inject it under the meniscus of the oil bubble to help with visualization. That was beautifully done. I also wanted to comment on your earlier surgeries. I really love the way you thought there. Right, you started with the vitrectomy, you peeled posteriorly, and really, in general, you don't need buccal vitrectomy. So I don't think any of us do a lot of buccal vitrectomies. I'll do a straight buccal for a young primary retinal detachment without a vitrectomy. Most primary retinal detachments, especially in pseudophakic patients, can be nicely handled with just a vitrectomy. And these cases that we're seeing here are unusual cases: the zipper syndrome, the high myopes, the anomalous vitreous base insertion. And I think, Yusuke, your thought process is very much like mine, and I think also Hassan's. You start the membrane peeling posteriorly and peeling under PFO if need be, and then if there's retinal foreshortening, then you can do a retinectomy and or a sclerobuccal. I just love what you do.
Thank you
Can
so
I
much.
ask you something? Can I ask something?
Yes.
Just one question to all of you, and if you can answer that. Usually, we're showing techniques now that they are addressed to very experienced surgeons. It's not for everybody what we're doing there. And the question that I got a lot of times from other ophthalmologists is, this case, long-standing PVR, is it worthy to do it? And for what reason? What is the visual acuity at the end? Nobody's telling it. You're telling me it's a flat retina, successfully. And I got my own ideas on that, but I would like to ask you also, what is your answer to your colleagues or to the patient? What kind of visual improvement they have, or what kind of visual they had before in order to achieve a successful case and say that I did something better for this guy?
So that's a really important question. And I think that the most important answer to that is, well, it depends on what's going on in the other eye. If the other eye is a prosthesis and there's no vision, then heroic surgery to take somebody from hand motion to count or light perception to hand motion, or from hand motion to count fingers makes sense. But if the other eye is 20/20, and then perhaps we can be a little bit less aggressive. Certainly in the setting of cost containment, blindness in one eye is pretty inexpensive as opposed to heroic surgeries. Here in the U.S., if it's a multiply operated eye and the visual potential isn't any better than hand motion, sometimes we'll leave those eyes be. But if we can get some peripheral vision and some counting fingers, then globe retention and cosmesis, as opposed to a slowly shrinking eye progressing towards phthisis and needing a prosthesis, I think that's a reasonable indication to do these heroic surgeries.
I would like to ask Ogura on that. Oshima on that.
Yeah.
Not Ogura.
So that's, you point out a very nice question. Already discussed with the patient about the issue. Because, the last case I showed you, it's called a very young case. So I not only discussed with himself, with his parents, even though this case, if the patient, you can expect we can get the visual acuity better than the count finger or 0.1 more, I don't think it makes sense to the surgery. But if the young patient, the parents or himself also want to do, I try. But I won't talk about them, only 1 or 2 chances. Because, do several surgery, you can get better results. And if the young worker, if the outlook is very, very important. If you fail to the surgery, you also can encounter some other, you need to find the prosthesis or otherwise you will look the outlooking. So I discussed this issue with the patient several times. Discussed with official very severe case. It's a very old guy. Most of my case, I discovered to gave up about surgery. It doesn't make sense as you told.
I'm more aggressive than you are, and I have my own visual thing that I would like to say. First of all, people that they have one eye, which is much or less blind, they close this blind eye in order to see better with a good eye.
That's right.
It's projecting the dark through the crossing to the other eye. So first of all, I'd like to do to everybody, in order to have a visual field, that it would not stop him from seeing with the other eye. The second issue is that with silicone oil and not with gas, I keep the phthisis out of the question for a long time. Especially, I'm using only 5,700 Sandy Stokes silicone oil, which is a great improvement, the silicone oil results, and to what you're afraid of. And third, these people that I've seen a lot of surprises, people that they have barely vision or whatever, just light perception. When they're flattened the retina, they come and say, thank you for having hand motions. It's a great improvement to have your visual field of this eye and to have a nice looking eye for a long time after that. So to my mind, I never stop doing a case on the basis of vision, because you always, when you're successful, you always have a patient who is grateful. Nobody comes and tell me, doctor, I cannot read the paper, or I cannot do this or cannot that. If you explain them correctly, they are happy by just removing the blindness from one eye. So I'm with you all the way, but people starting asking me, and because this is already for everybody, this seminar is not for especially technicians or doctors, I wanted to put that, don't send them all these cases, even if they are 6 months, 7 months, 1 year, or send them, because they might have improvement. People from the ophthalmologist, they say, don't have to go to the ophthalmologist, your eye is lost.
Athanasios, excuse me, we are very late and we have to go on, but the discussion is very important. No, don't worry. Yusuke, thank you. So our next speaker, as Athanasios say, when you are extremely intelligent, you become crazy like Riemann. That's the first thing he told me about when I was in Thessaloniki, and I totally agree. So Chris, please, the screen is totally yours.
All right, let's see. So I've been doing heads-up surgery for a long time. I'll start off with a simple case that doesn't have a video, just to show some Riemann craziness that helped the patient that had a difficult situation. So this is a 90-year-old man with macula involving retinal detachment lasting for 3 weeks. And for every year of his age, he had the degree of bent back syndrome and kyphosis. So the question here is how to deal with the positioning changes. This man could not straighten his back out to more than, to less than a 90-degree curvature. So we did some gymnastics with the stretcher and maximized the positioning, but even with stretcher gymnastics, we could not get his angle any better than 45 degrees towards his feet. So what we did is we prepped him and we draped him, and we used the Hogstride scope, which has a very aggressive way of being able to tilt in both directions. You can go almost 90 degrees. You can turn the scope almost flat towards you and away from you, put the camera on, and then just did the case heads up with comfortable position. You know, in the past, we would have done this standing up, leaning forward, and that's very, very awkward. But this was a routine, relatively straightforward case that ended up doing well. And the idea of being able to do gymnastics with the microscope as opposed to with your C-spine in these cases is a nice way to handle it. So first case, this is a previously sutured CZ70 IOL, sutured at another center 10 years previously. The CZ70 is the single piece PMMA lens with eyelets. And back in the bad old days, people would suture those with 10-O-proline, and we now know that after 10 years, those 10-O-prolines rupture and break. So what we're planning to do here is to rescue this existing CZ70 lens. And we start off here with making 2 sclerotomies. I've opened the conjunctiva, 27 gauge surgery because the vitrectomy is mostly done. I take a loop of Gore-Tex suture into one sclerotomy, out the other sclerotomy, and then externalize it through a small paracentesis. And then I do this little maneuver that some people call the Riemann twist, where I create that little twist in the Gore-Tex. The Gore-Tex has pretty good memory. You can do this with a chandelier, which I'm showing here. It's a little more fiddling, but you can do it without the chandelier as well. 1 forceps or 2 forceps, you take the twist through the existing eyelet of the intraocular lens. Then you open the twist and put the end of the suture, the loop that you've just put through the eyelet over the end of the haptic. You pull up the lens and then tie the Gore-Tex suture. I like to over tie this Gore-Tex suture because Gore-Tex can slip. Then you rotate the knot intraocularly, and in this case, I didn't quite get the angle right because I didn't know exactly where the other meridian was. But if one of these prolines broke, certainly the other proline probably is going to break as well. So we're going to go ahead and break that, repeat this maneuver. Here's the little twist maneuver. Again, put that in the eye, push the lens posteriorly. Again, the twist goes through the eyelet, around the haptic, and now we can center this lens very nicely and position it, close the conjunctiva. Of course, we do scleral depression. Close the conjunctiva, and he went on to get back to his baseline visual acuity. He did very nicely. Here's another interesting case. This is a 38-year-old patient that I've been taking care of for over 12 years now. She's had multiple surgeries, tube shunts, so on and so forth. She had 2 reticerts to control her posterior uveitis. The most recent one was 7 years ago. And this was right before they switched over to the new, better adherent way of adhering the pellet to the tab of the reticert pellet. So she came in complaining of a floater, and described symptoms, interestingly, of photopsia. So as this lux pellet was bouncing around in the back of the eye, she would have these explosions of photopsias that presumably from the pellet impacting the retina. So she came in telling a pretty compelling story. So here's the surgery to remove that Lux Retisert pellet. 25 gauge here because I want a little bit better infusion flow. We open up the Retisert wound, the conjunctiva. We open the Tenon's capsule over top of that. There's usually a little bit of fibrosis of the Tenon's capsule. It's important that you get down to the sclera. We're opening the Retisert wound. I use a 0.3 tooth forceps to grab the old silicone retinal tab before it falls into the eye, and then you use pure suction on the Retisert pellet to lift this into the retroiris space. We hold it in place with suction and then reach in with an intraocular foreign body forceps and grab the pellet from the cutter with the suction, remove the pellet. We birth the pellet and then close using a running vicral suture. Her posterior uveitis was more of an intermediate uveitis, had burned itself out. You see the vasculitis there. The old vasculitis had burned itself out and had been inactive for a long time. We gave her an anterior subtenon scanologue to help with uveitis control after tickling the uvea here at the pars plana, and she went on to do very, very well. A third case, so this is just showing off intraoperative OCT viewing. This is a vitrectomy with membrane peel. And so this is, intraoperative OCT is a big question mark. Is it useful? Is it not useful? I will tell you that it is, I think it is useful. It is not a must-have for every single case. But if you're going to use intraoperative OCT, it is very, very important that we're able to visualize the OCT in the full resolution. So this is the Hogstrite microscope and Ingenuity and using the Constellation. And you see here this is I'm operating off the screen, and you can and you use the auto rangefinder, and you see that you get the full resolution of the OCT that gives you the information that you need with a little bit of epiretinal membrane, a little bit of intramacular traction, and some posterior hyaloid. And so here you can see with split screen viewing, I can aspirate the posterior hyaloid, and I can go back and forth very quickly between the live surgical view, which is in 3D on the right, and the OCT, and I can actually confirm by OCT live while I'm operating that I've lifted the posterior hyaloid here. I'll fast forward here a little bit. When you put in some dye, you lose the intraoperative OCT. Then when the dye is gone, you can see again the macular pucker. It's there. It's not a horrible macular pucker. You can see that the resolution is much better when you're looking at the OCT on the left than when you're looking at the image injection, even though the Hog image injection is much better in terms of resolution than the Leica or the Zeiss image injection. And again, here, while we're peeling the membrane, I find myself going back and forth between the OCT and the membrane peel to actually confirm what I'm doing. It's very, very interesting. So we're just at the very cusp of starting to use the intraoperative OCT. If you're going to use it, it is very important that you have access to the full resolution image on a screen that is very close to however you're seeing your primary image. And split screen viewing here with Ingenuity is very, very powerful. And again, so I'm going to freeze this here. You can see how nice the OCT looks on the left, and the image injected OCT looks good, but the detail is just not there. So it's important to look at it. And here you see it again. You can see the layers on the right. You can see, and you can see the OCT, but you cannot see it as well and with the resolution that you can on the left. So last case is a quick case that we did just recently. This is a patient with megalocornea. previous retinal detachment repairs, previous IOL reposition, fixated to the iris with tenoproline, now has another dislocation of the intraocular lens with a broken iris, a proline suture, and of course this nice man is on Coumadin. So what we decided to do here is reposition him using kind of a Yamane style technique. In Coumadinized patient, anticoagulated patients, I like using the smallest gauge surgery possible. We kind of take the capsular remnants off of the IOL. And now I realize that I've actually placed my trocar with the bevel in the wrong direction. So I replace my trocar. I grab the hyaloid, the haptic, pull it out, create my little Yamane bleb on the end of it. Then do the same thing here on this side, and what you'll see is as soon as I pull it out, oops, the first one goes right back into the eye, because this is a megalocornea eye. It's really, really large. So again, we create this. It's best to do this with the Zeiss, with the Zeiss IOLs that have thicker haptics and the thin bore 30 gauge needles. But you can do it with a trocars very nicely, and this patient went on to do very well. At some point, we're going to probably suture in an iris prosthesis in this eye because he's got a lot of glare complaints. So, thank you.
Thank you so much, Chris. Lots of many cases. The first case I loved how powerful 3D might be, and we have many 3D users here. But first, Hudson Nakamura, which of the cases of Chris you like the most?
I love them all, but I'm going to ask you about your case is very good, Gastón. And the fit to remove the pellet. The fit to remove the pellet. How would you remove without using PFC? You did not use PFC. Do you think it's necessary to remove the PFC and also the sclerotomy? When you took the pellet out of the eye, how much would you enlarge the sclerotomy, Christopher, to get rid of the, to remove it without getting too much of a low pressure?
So, they say that you need a 5 millimeter sclerotomy to put this in. Whenever you're putting hardware in and out of the eye, I always, if I'm going to make a 5 millimeter hole in the eye, making a 5.5 or a 6 millimeter hole is just not that much more of a big deal than making a 5 millimeter hole. So I've gotten, with gray hair and having made many surgical decisions that I've learned from and choose not to repeat, I found that I tend to make my sclerotomies a little bit larger. With the Constellation, you have IOP control. IOP control really helps to maintain intraocular pressure. If you're worried about that, you can actually do a 23 gauge surgery. The DORC system has that high flow infusion cannula that snaps on the outside of the infusion, so you don't get globe collapse. But the key thing is when you're moving the eye is to not gape the wound. So if you're applying posterior or anterior pressure to that sclerotomy, you're going to take that sclerotomy and you're going to gape it open, and the eye is going to collapse. You have to get the angle just right. You have to look at it as you're going in with the foreign body forceps. You go in with the foreign body forceps. You don't go anterior posterior, and I'm holding it with suction from the vitreous cutter. So I didn't use PFO, and you just reach across, grab it in one smooth maneuver, and pull it out.
But what if the pellet comes out with the only aspiration? Wouldn't it be better to use the forceps at the beginning and just grab it and lift it up?
So our intraocular foreign body forceps are the old Alcon. They're like 18 gauge forceps. and they're very, very wonky in terms of you need high grade gross motor function to actuate the slider. We don't do that many intraocular foreign body cases, and the control that you have with those, if you're picking something up off the macula of a patient that's seeing well, is just not that great. I prefer to do those maneuvers a mile away from the or a kilometer away from the from the macula. That's why I lift it with suction from the cutter.
Yeah, it's a lot safer. Congratulations! All your cases are just great.
Mortada, you were shaking your head. Yes or no? What do you like?
I like to use Helon instead of PFCL or PFCO, because if you inject Helon beneath this dislocated whatever foreign bodies IOL, so if you inject Helon, it elevates the object from the surface of the retina, and it protects at the same time the surface of the retina. And most important is that it limits the mobility of the object inside the eye, or the foreign body inside the eye. So I prefer to use Helon instead of PFCO in order for these three reasons. It helps to protect the retina, limit the mobility, and assist in elevating it from the surface of the retina.
And the nice thing about Helon is it also protects the retina in the event of dropping that foreign body. You know, sometimes it comes out of the forceps, you try to pull it out of the eye, and it drops back onto the posterior segment. The Helon will protect from that impact, especially with heavier.
That's a bad experience for PFCL and lifting things from the surface of the retina. I'm pleasantly experienced in removing huge amount of nucleus from the surface of the retina. And I found out that correcting, I fully agree with Riemann, you cannot touch anything that's sitting on the retina because you cannot control how much pressure you can press against this through the retina, because you cannot control your weight or your strength to that, because it's minute, that you think. And I put it as a must that you have never to touch anything that's sitting on the retina unless it's encapsulated. Everything else, you have to lift it in the middle and try to catch it in another way. The second issue I have, I never use perfluorocarbon in this object, because usually when you try to mobilize the eye and get something, perfluorocarbon is going sideways. And it's not sitting anymore on the back of this, but it might sometimes cover it up instead of being behind it. And then it presses against what you have. So you don't, if you lift things, you don't need the PFCL. You just work in the middle of the eye. And if it drops again, nothing really happens because a lot of things drop down. I just remove it again by suctions, bring it in the center of the eye, and everything works in the center of the eye. And the last thing, I try not to remove anything from the sclera, 5 or 6 millimeters. I don't like lenses. We here in Europe, we do combine things all the time. So I would much prefer, if I have the option, to do the cataract, remove it from the cataract, put a lens, and keep the area of the sclera to the minimum opening that you have for a trocar. I don't like sclera opening. It has so many things from incarcerated vitreous to hypotony to a lot of turbulence in the eye. And there's no real rehabilitation for the sclera. The sclera never closes 100% at the end. That's my side of it.
Carlos, Mateo, you wanted to say something.
Let me be controversial, as always. You know.
Yes, I want blood on the arena, please.
I far prefer carbon liquid. Let me tell you why. Not because all of this, because when you remove the foreign body with the perfluorocarbon liquid in the eye, you have the opportunity to turn off the infusion line. Because when you break the retina in the periphery, when you remove the foreign body, it's the vitreous you have anchor in the foreign body and the forceps that you remove. If you increase the pressure of the eye, fluid currents go to the sclerotomy, and all of the peripheral vitreous go to the sclerotomy, and then you can promote peripheral breaks. The fluorocarbon liquid weight is double than the water, and then you can turn off the infusion, and you gently remove the foreign body. I prefer to use the fluorocarbon liquid. At the end, another trick is not to do a linear cut in the sclera, but to do a square incision. You have the vertical one, and then you make a horizontal one, and it permits you to have no so big, horizontal breaks. And then with only one suture in the corner, you again turn on your 25 or 23 or 27, whatever you use. And I prefer to use.
Mateo, I bring you some blood. First of all, you were pre-valve surgeons. When you got valve infusion and you don't have turbulence going outside of the trocars that you're working, it's much more stable, this. I agree with you. When you have flow in the eye, but going outside, you're moving. And the second thing is, you are not allowed to move anything inside the eye if you don't completely remove every bit of the vitreous around it. I'm a true believer of complete vitrectomy before you remove anything from the area. And with trocar, you don't have this turbulence. But I agree with you that if you have a turbulence, it might be a problem. And you don't put half a cc of perfluorocarbon behind it in order to survive.
You disappear.
I think he lost connection because he's in the beach. No worries.
I just want to show one real quick case, all right, that I think is really interesting to support what Athanasios was saying. So this is a case with an intraocular foreign body and an intraocular foreign body, metallic intraocular foreign body. I did this was in 2004. Before we had, there's the foreign body. We did a phaco. I'm opening the primary posterior capsule. I'm taking the extraocular electromagnet, foreign body electromagnet, magnetizing a pick. And if you look carefully here, watch the magnetized pick, the foreign body just jumps up to the pick. You can take and then I very carefully bring it through the primary posterior capsulorhexis, push it into the viscoelastic filled anterior chamber, and then remove the foreign body from the anterior chamber uneventfully. Put a lens into the capsular bag, and this I went on to do very well. Just
great. Imagine a 24 years old boy, and you have an intraocular foreign body. Would you remove a clear lens? Second, imagine that this is a -6 diopters in myopia in both eyes. What is the refraction you're going to leave the patient? -1 and -6? And an isometropia can be a problem. Then in a young patient, this is very, if the lens is, and many of these cases are young patients, because many of them are young patients, the trauma with these foreign bodies. Then, to remove a lens in a young patient is not that, if the lens is clear, I think it's not a good thing.
Totally.
Well, but in this case, that was a young patient. That was a 27-year-old or 26-year-old patient. It was 15 years ago. And he had siderosis bulbi and a white mature lens. So it had to come out there. But
just before going ahead, sorry, Chris. Lukan, what did you read this morning about these eyes, 3 pieces IOL? What's happening in the market? Tell us.
It's a discussion in iConnect on ASCRS. Zeiss discontinued to produce the CT Lucia with PVDF haptics. They still have old stock, but now the colleagues are complaining that they do not deliver. So the PVDF haptics probably will vanish, at least in Lucia type lens.
For people who like Yamane, it's a disaster. It's a disaster because it's the only we have in the market with PVDF haptics. Okay, guys, let's go ahead. So our friend Hassan Mortada from Cairo, a lovely country, Egypt. Please, the screen is yours.
Okay, I want to show two cases. Really, for me, they were strange cases. The first one was referred to me from a neighbor country with loss of vision following subtenon injection of triamcinolone. Yes. She was a 65-year-old Sudanese female. Medical history, she was diabetic.
Your video is not running, Hassan.
No, this is, okay. This is just to show you that the cornea was affected, and it was difficult to remove the cataract, and also it was difficult to visualize the tip of the infusion cannula at the beginning of the vitrectomy. The visual acuity was in motion, the intraocular pressure was elevated, and she had a dense cataract that was removed, and this is the picture.
Okay.
So, vitrectomy, it's a combination of a mixture of hemorrhage and triamcinolone, and I tried to peel the posterior hyaloid, and then using the tissue manipulator, I tried to scratch the aberrant triamcinolone particles, and then you can see that they induced some sort of severe retinal ischemia. Over here, I tried to peel this membrane, but the underlying retina was so friable and so ischemic that it was impossible to do this without tearing the creating retinal break. And at any rate, it was.
Hassan, sorry again. The video is not playing.
It's not playing.
No, the video didn't play so far.
Okay. Is it playing now?
Try to hit the space bar.
Press play, let's see.
Playing?
No.
No. Welcome back, Athanasios.
Well, I don't. This isolated bit doesn't have electricity.
So Hassan, try to share your screen again, please.
Okay, I'm trying. Can you see my screen now? Or?
No.
No? Okay. Can you see it now?
Go.
Yes.
Okay, this is the second case. Okay. Let's start by this case. It is a case of massive vitreous hemorrhage and rhabdomatogenous retinal detachment complicating subretinal ejection of TPA and gas for hemorrhagic AMD. And he was a 75-year-old male. The right eye has disciform scar. The left eye underwent vitrectomy, subretinal injection of TPA and gas for management of subretinal hemorrhage complicating neovascular AMD since 45 days when he presented to me. He presented with dense vitreous vision, and pressure was high, and the ultrasound revealed inferior pullous retinal. Can you see me? Can you see the video?
Yes, we can see the video.
Okay. We removed the hemorrhage, and then there was a bullous retinal detachment, and massive subretinal hemorrhage. I decided to perform inferior 180 degrees retinotomy, removing the subretinal hemorrhage, and then removing the subretinal choroidal neovascular membrane complex, which was very fibrotic. And you can see that there was a huge area of choroidal and RP atrophy. So I prepared the eye to perform choroidal patch graft. PFCL was injected under the retina to stabilize the retinal flap. And then this was the only healthy area of the choroid and RPE. The other areas were affected by some atrophy, and you remove the choroidal patch graft, manipulating it under PFCL until it was brought over the area of choroidal atrophy beneath the macular area. PFCL was removed, and everting the retina. PFCL was injected over the surface of the retina, and I made sure that the graft is centralized beneath the macular area. There was a retinal fold here that was flattened by TAN scraper, and this is at the end of the operation. Direct PFCL silicone exchange was performed. This is the time at silicone oil removal. There was a slight movement of the graft, choroidal graft. It was a little bit eccentric, but the vision improved from hand motion to 0.05. This is the at the time of the operation. This is at the end of the silicone oil injection, and this is the post-operative picture. So this was the first case. Let me look for the. So it seems that the second case was lost from here.
No, take your time, Hassan, because the other case is good as well. So what I would suggest, close this one.
Okay.
Yeah, then you first open the second case and then you share screen.
Yep.
Take your time because you are here, and really nice case. I know some people here also work with retina grafts and choroidal grafts. I want to listen your opinions later because Hassan did it beautifully. Actually, we have a question here from Julio Grijera. Why do you take the graft from inferior choroid? I think because the access is easier to manipulate.
This is one reason, but the main reason is that the choroid and the RPE in many cases were so bad and atrophic, and this was the only area from where I can have a healthier RPE and choroid.
Hmm? So our friend Julio Grijera, thanks for the question answered.
So I've done a few of these, and with excellent initial results, but kind of a fibrotic degeneration of the choroidal graft. Have you seen that at all, Hassan, or do your grafts stay clear long term, or stay functioning?
The graft remain functioning as proved by the improvement in the visual acuity and the vision remains stable. This is but the only proof. So
in the ones that I've done over time, the graph just starts getting this fibrotic transformation, and the vision stays okay, but I'm worried about the fibrotic transformation. And I've actually thought about perhaps possibly using intraocular methotrexate to prevent that fibrotic transformation. And some of our European colleagues have done these and have found that and have published a fairly high PVR rate, and perhaps the methotrexate could help with that as well.
I have tried the methotrexate in cases of PVR, but in a large number of cases it did not work. So I cannot be sure that it will work in these cases. But there are some fibrosis that usually occurs around the graft. But I don't think it will affect the function of the graft because the vision remains stable, and it was much better than before doing the surgery.
I got it. Gastón, you had a question, please.
Yes, I don't have experience with this patch graph. So for Riemann and for Mortada, I want to ask the visual results and for how long does the vision improves? Really, I never do this technique.
I think the vision is, the problem with in these cases is the recurrence of the areolar or geographic atrophy, even in the grafts. So, and this is not only for choroidal patch graft, but it also occurs in cases of macular translocation. So I have cases of macular translocation that remain very successful, and the patient enjoyed good vision and even reading vision. And then after 5, 6, 10 years, the patient starts to develop, was translocated or in the graft place. So I think it is only temporary treatment. So, but it lasts for a good time.
Carlos?
One, there are two steps that are very important in this surgery. First is that to remove the blood is not that easy. Hassan, you know that. Stay 20 minutes with the retina making like this and the blood.
By manually just supporting the retina with a soft tip or instrument, and then working with the probe gently. You should not aspirate except when you are sure you are aspirating really blood. And then once the media is clear, you inject the PFCO to stabilize the retina.
We have a question from the attendees, Professor Mortada. How do you avoid bleeding? Do you use endocautery or laser for the edges of the graft?
I didn't mention that, but I do laser around the area intended for having the graft from it. So it is laser and not diatherm.
Okay, thank you so much. Do you mind if we go ahead, Professor Mortada?
Yes, we can see the second case. Can you see my screen or not yet?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Now?
Now, yes.
There we go.
Okay. As I said, it was an ocular perforation. The patient was referred with loss of vision following subcutaneous injection of triamcinolone, and the patient presented with partially clear cornea as seen here, and cataracts, and the pressure was high, and after difficult time in removing the cataract, this was the view inside the eye. It was a mixture of blood and triamcinolone, I tried to detach the posterior halide after removing the cloud inside the vitreous. I discovered that the retinal vessels are mostly occluded over there, and the retina was ischemic. There was a membranes of triamcinolone strongly adherent to the underlying retina. The retina was friable and ischemic. I tried to peel these from the surface of the retina, but it was impossible to do this without tearing the retina. And I intended to do a retinotomy in order to remove these masses of subretinal triamcinolone. And I tried to remove it through this small area, but it was impossible. So I have to remove the good part of the retina in order to be able to remove the subretinal triamcinolone. I removed the ILM, anticipating that there will be much proliferation, so as to protect the macular area. And I removed the ILM as wide as possible. And then in order to remove the triamcinolone sheet over the retinal, the RPE, I have to remove this part of the retina. And it was really a hard time trying to remove this adherent masses. It was extending to the retina, and probably this was the site of perforation, this area. So after succeeding of removing the most of the triamcinolone mass, I reattached the remaining part of the retina with PFCO. Laser was applied, and then the eye was filled with silicone oil. The problem came not from the retina, it came from the cornea, because after some time the cornea decompensated when we have to perform keratoplasty, but there was some proliferation over the area of the retina around the peeled eye lamp, but the retina remains stable, and the vision improved to 2 meters. Thank you.
I don't know which of the cases was more difficult, but really well done. Thank you so much. It was a fantastic case. Any one of the participants want to share its opinion? Lukan, go ahead.
I have an interesting question about the second case. Why you need to remove in first place the triamcinolone under the retina instead of just plugging up the hole? Why I'm asking? Because I have developed a suprachoroidal needle, and we are using that almost 2 years already, and we are injecting suprachoroidal triamcinolone at least 1 and 1.2 ml. So what was the reason and the need to remove all that quantity of triamcinolone and damaging the retina?
Yeah, this is not injected. This was not injected in the suprachoroidal space. I know about your needle. This is injected under the retina, and I think the high concentration, the high volume of triamcinolone injected cause a sort of retinal toxicity, and you can see that the retinal vessels were ischemic, occluded, and retina friable. So I have to get rid of this toxic material injected into the subretinal space. I don't know if any one of you have experienced subretinal volume, high volume of triamcinolone injected under the retina. So this was the only solution in my hands.
As a matter of fact, one of our colleagues, which was banned from our team, Dr. Marashi, managed to implant supraretinally a significant amount of triamcinolone because his stopper of the needle was too short, and there was nothing actually after that?
Maybe what you have seen that the retinal vessels are occluded, and the retina was friable and hemorrhagic and ischemic, and I have to deal with, so I cannot close the case with this mess of subretinal triamcinolone, and I know that the retina is ischemic, and there seems to be toxicity, maybe from the preservative of the drug, or from the high concentration of the drug. So it was, for me, it was a peculiar case.
So I'll jump in here. I think, Hassan, I think I would have also probably removed it, and because the other reason to remove the triescence is the Kenalog is because the visualization of the anatomy was not that good, and if you had to find where the retinal break was, if there was a retinal break, and you have to get good retinopexy around the edges of the break, which you can't do if you have a bunch of triamcinolone between the retina and the retinal pigment epithelium.
Exactly.
Okay, guys, very good. So let's go ahead because we are late on our schedule. Our next speaker, as Tanasi said, the best surgeon, Carlos Mateo. Please, go ahead. Benvinguts. I promised you I would learn Catalan for the next webinar. I'm on the way.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Always Athanasios is riding on me, and I think he doesn't think that, But you asked me to show you a complicated case of vitreoretinal surgery. This is a case I had, 2.5 years ago, was sent to me because a colleague had, during the buccal bead surgery for a temporal retinal detachment, he had this problem with a massive subretinal hemorrhage. He has light perception. Then I started to do the removal of the silicone oil. As you saw, I removed the silicone oil using three sclerotomies, three ways. One is for the light, the other are active, because this was 5,700, centis, so very difficult to remove under 23 gauge, Then I performed lensectomy. I love lensectomies. Athanasios knows that. I know all of you would perform phacoemulsification in this case. I love the view that you obtain with lensectomy. Look at the iris doesn't move, and then you clean the posterior surface of the anterior capsule. Then, here, in difference to the Hassan, problem, this patient has no retinal detachment. The blood is touching the RPE, touching the retina. Then you have to detach the retina to remove this huge subretinal clot. Then we are going to inject. This is only fluid. This is not RTPA. I'm not going to wait for 45 minutes. And then I make a fluid exchange to make all of this fluid to collect, to detach the macular area, and I'm going to, of course, to cut the peripheral retina to remove this. I don't know if any one of you would try to remove this severe clot, this large clot, through a small retinotomy. Don't try it, because so big that even with a large break in the retina, it's difficult to be removed. And I cut 180 degrees, and then I go down under the retina, and then you begin these 20 minutes that you don't see anything. The retina is moving, and the blood is, of course, the recording is trimmed. Then you don't see it, but it's so difficult to deal with this hemorrhage. The blood is floating, the retina is moving. You can grasp the retina, you can cut it more. Then I'm using my left hand, I'm using a flexible loop, and in my right, I'm using the Vitreton tip. But this clot always tend to, if you free it, it's going to go under the retina again. Then you have to maintain the clot with both hands. It's so difficult in these cases. Then you're going to eat the blood with the Vitreton tip. You remove more blood and more clot until the subretinal space is free of blood. Then you put perfluorocarbon liquid. You are attaching the retina, as you can see here, with a flexible loop, you remove these fall peripherals. I agree with all of you. I always try to, if I have visualization with the lancectomy is perfect, and I always remove the interlimiting membrane to avoid membranes in the macro area. I remove as much as possible, as peripheral as possible. But, when you go to the arcade, it's so difficult. Then I do laser and the perform carbon liquid, and at the end, silicone oil. I don't know if you would use gas in this case. Remember, what's light perception, and you don't know the visual prognosis of this case. Then this is the day after, wonderful picture, and it is 2 weeks later, but this is 3 weeks later, and PVR. Blood and retinal detachment means PVR, and then you have PVR. I remove again the silicone oil, as you can see here, in with two entry sites. And then I always stain under air. I prefer to stay under air because you stretch the folds, and then the dye enters in contact with the membranes. And then, as you can see here now, we remove the dye, and I always use to peel the PVR. I always use perform carbon liquid. It's counteract my forces. You peel, and the perform carbon, pushes down. Look at in the nasal side, there is subretinal fluid. What does mean? This means that you don't have breaks in the nasal side because, the fluid cannot go anywhere. Then very, 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 don't be rushed. Don't rush because, the worst thing you can have here is breaks, small breaks in the mid-periphery. These are very difficult to touch. This is, as Yusuke showed before, we're going to remove this membrane using both hands, trying to avoid to pull too much from the here I'm going to show you another technique. This is a napkin, the napkin use of the two forceps. You don't close the second forceps, and then you pull the retina very gentle down, just to avoid to pull too much to the center of the eye. Then, in this way, I try to avoid, peripheral breaks, small breaks that at the end will end with a retinal detachment. With two hands on the perform carbon liquids. Again, don't be rushed. If you need to re-stain to remove as much as possible these epiretinal membranes, and you will be able to reattach the retina as you see here. I repeat, very important, try to avoid to produce even tiny breaks in the mid-periphery. Then I'm enlarging now the island peeling in the macro area. And I asked the patient this week to come again after removal of the silicone oil. I removed the silicone oil 8 months later, and I put an IOL in the sulcus, and you will see now the OCT of the IOL, and the OCT, and visual acuity now is 20/40. The patient is very happy. Not that happy because the patient has some kind of diplopia. And my last question to you is, do you think that, this is the fovea is here, the OCT shows perfect profile, but the fovea is here? My question to you, the other eye is 20/20. My question is, do you think that this is the cause of diplopia? And I tell you, no, it's not. Because we were performing limited macro translocation. I have many cases like this, and this diplopia disappears over time. But this patient has more than 2 years now, almost 2 years of follow-up, and this is the case I wanted to show. And that's done. There's only one case.
Thank you so much. Amazing case. Yusuke, I want your comments on Carlos' surgery, please.
Well, it's a very, very tough case. Actually, it's a wonderful surgery, always inspired from your surgery. So the key point, as Carlos talked about, how much amount membrane you can remove, otherwise you will encounter the lip proliferation. So do you always remove the membrane underneath the peripheral column? Or how do you remove the membrane up to the peripheral area?
In many cases, if the patient has severe anterior PVR, that nowadays is so rare. But if the patient has severe anterior PVR, I prefer to first remove the anterior vitreous base. Why? Because when you put perform carbon liquid, the retina remains detached. If you remove first the anterior traction, the retina reattaches. then I always, Yusuke, I always remove the membranes under perforated liquid. Contract forces, open the folds. I clearly prefer this.
Just like the third hand, right?
Yeah. It's a third hand. Yeah, I have a video in '87 showing the third hand of the perforated liquid. Yeah.
Can I ask a question? I think we've seen a lot of really beautiful peels. Many of you showed fantastic peels. Which forceps does everybody use? What did you had two forceps? It looks like it was a max grip and a 4-3.
Let me tell you.
What did you?
Yeah, let me tell you. I use the Bausch & Lomb end gripping in one hand. In the other hand, I use the grip of Alcon forceps. Has no teeth. But for the ILM period, I'm sorry, I don't have any personal, economical issues about this, but, I always use the end gripping forces to peel the ILM in the membranes. And the second hand, I use other one. The Alcon is, for me, perfect one.
And the nice thing about the end gripping forceps is that they open up a little bit so that you can use them like a lasso to pull the membranes out.
Absolutely.
Yusuke, how about you? What forceps do you use for these cases?
Okay, well, usually I prefer use the max grip. Max is 1/4. So only the very, very rare case, just a myopic case, very high myopic case in the very thin retina. At that time, I use end gripping.
Very good. I like the grease hubber from Alcon. Gastón, I think, is the same because I learned with him, and you can change the tips. So I'm used with the handle. So it's perfect. You are used with the handle, makes life easier. Lukan?
I'm using...
The name of the handle is the Revolution handle.
Yeah.
I'm using Eckert end gripping forceps from Dork.
Okay.
I this and this. For me, this so difficult. And you have to ILM to grasp it. With this, you have some, you go there but it's a matter of preference. You are used to use it, you like,
Yeah, the best one is the one who works better in your hands.
Of course, absolutely.
That's it. Okay, guys, so let's move ahead. Our next speaker, my brother co-organizer, Lukan Mishev from Bulgaria. So let me just mute here because we have some background noise.
So do you see my screen?
Yes, we do.
So this is a case which is interesting because I'm the fourth surgeon here. The first one has put a buccal which failed. The same surgeon tried pneumatic retinopexy with gas. It failed. Then the second surgeon tried pars plana vitrectomy with silicone, which failed. And I was the fourth one to deal with the situation. As you see, I opened the conjunctiva because I plan to remove the buccal, and I replaced my trocars. So now you will see the lower part of the retina is detached, and there is a good rim of PVR in the lower retinectomy. Here somewhere is the buccal which was firstly done, and this is interesting mode which is sort of angio but without fluorescing and only with modified Ingenuity color filters, so you can see at least the vessels. It is just a glimpse of what the Ingenuity is capable if you are playing a lot with it. Now I remove the silicone, and then this is the picture that revealed under the silicone. There is already a pucker over the macula, which I will stain with brilliant blue G. Then with the Eckert forceps, I will peel this membrane, and I completely agree that in PVR cases, at least the macula should be released from further PVR or ERM formations, and we can prevent that only with ILM peel. Here the retina, albeit detached in the lower part, it's not mobile, so I don't use PFCL at the moment for the peeling. If you can see on the left part and the nasal part, there is a drainage retinotomy which was not even lasered. I find that really amusing. I like to use in my left hand the cutter in order to stabilize the eye and also to remove the membranes in order to not float in the eye during my peeling. I like the end gripping forceps because it approaches the retina really gently, so I cannot damage it, at least in my opinion, and it works well in my hands. So I try to peel as far as possible in the periphery. Then I will cut the tension. I see this as a strand opened between the both sides of the retina, and it pulls the lower part of the retina. And I really loved in one of our previous webinars, Dr. Carlos Mateo showed how the retina is different diameter in the upper part, and when you do a retinectomy, obviously it will not fit the lower part, the equator, etc. So something needs to be done like a tailor in order to fit the area. Now I pull the PVR onto the edges. Then I really like the scissors because they cut clean and they don't leave anything behind. And I cut all that edge which is PVR infused in order to remove it completely. I'm using Ingenuity, which provides a really good image actually. Now here comes the tailoring part. These are few radial cuts in order to relax the retina. These cuts of course can promote a little bleeding, which is not an issue, especially when you are fast with the PFCL bubble. This is the third radial retinotomy. And now here is the view under PFCL. Now look, where is the buccal? It's under the rectus. So it's obviously at least 11 millimeters from the limbus. Why I point that? Because next we will see where is the hole. And I don't know what type of buccal is this. This is something like a mattress probably. I like to clean the far periphery over the retinectomy because we have remnant vitreous here and we have also sources of PVR. Here still we have a remnant vitreous, and I like to clean everything. With the Ingenuity you can indent and you can see up to the ora serrata without any issues. I like to do a laser over that area also in order to prevent any PVR or neovascular complications later. Then you see where is the small hole which was originally to be blamed about this retinal detachment. It is near to the ora, so it's like 5 or max 6 millimeters from the limbus. Remember where was the buccal and what was the use of that buccal? I remove the buckle because if it failed the first time, it is obvious that the buckle doesn't cover the hole. Now, this is the fluid air exchange, and I like to implant a silicone not directly, but always after fluid air exchange, and that way I can judge if I can have a slippage or folding or something else with the retina. Now this is the silicone implantation. This is the eye filled with silicone. And this is the end of the case. And something I missed to mention was that the eye was pseudophakic. So I want your comments on buccal on pseudophakic eyes also. And that is my case.
Thank you, Lukan. So you did the 4th surgery of this eye?
Yes.
So he has been with other colleagues before. So Chris, you are a guy who should talk to Lukan more because he loves the ingenuity. He himself has improved the system, lowered the latency, and he can do amazing things. I want your comments on his surgery.
I thought it was a beautiful surgery. I thought, it's interesting. I might have tried to leave I couldn't tell because there was a little bit of a lag on my computer viewing it. But it looked, Athanasios, can you mute yourself? I hear beach.
I did.
I might have just done, so I agree with removing the scleral buckle. I wonder if the failed retinal detachment was simply the failed previous surgery. I would have peeled the ILM as you did. I would have relieved that macular pucker. I might have just done an air fluid exchange, drained from the previous retinectomy, the retinotomy, and then properly lasered that. That might have been all that I needed. But again, if you really think that there was inferior traction that was the problem there, then you did the right thing. I couldn't see it. I would then you have to lift that and the idea of some radial relaxing incisions to make sure that the circumference of the retina in that meridian matches the circumference of the sclera makes sense.
Thank you. Hudson Nakamura, please.
Yeah, I want to comment on your case. I like doing, Lukan, I always like to do for pseudophakic and aphakic patients, the combined buccal vitrectomy. That works for me very good. We did that paper I mentioned some minutes ago in Canada with Dr. Diveni, Dr. Lem. And I love doing buccals. You know, sometimes you have to remove the buccal because, for example, this buccal was just underneath the rectus muscle. So, but I like doing for pseudophakics. In the aphakics, you get rid of the RPE and the likelihood of getting the retina attached is a lot better. Great case, great images, especially the one from the Angel and Ingenuity system. Very good. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you. Professor Mortada, any comment?
No, I think all the comments have been said.
Okay, thank you so much. So let's go ahead. Last but not least, your humble moderator. Let me just open the video to share the screen. 1 second. Can you see it?
Yes, we can.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so before I start, let me just tell you the background of this patient. This is a 48 years old male who had a stroke many years ago, so now he's on a wheelchair. And 3 months ago, he has been assaulted by a gang of 4, and they attacked him with knives and clubs. And now you're gonna see what happened with this eye. So here you're gonna see, you have a luxated nucleus, okay? Here, it's a little bit dark, the image, but I'm doing the vitrectomy. Since he is young, we have a very dense vitreous. So before touching the lens, you have to perform a very good vitrectomy, and you have even vitreous around the iris. So I do you have to do a good periphery shaving. Otherwise, you're gonna have some PVR. But luckily, he didn't have any retinal detachment. Here, I'm trying to deal with the nucleus, but it's too hard to be eaten and too soft to be chopped. So I put some PFO to protect the posterior pole, and then I use the lollipop technique to try to chop it a little bit easier. So I could a little bit, but even so, after dealing with it for a while, I couldn't eat it very much because it was too hard to be eaten. I tried the bite-off technique from Athanasios, and here's the rest. So I traveled back to the time, and then I entered with the monster, with a 20 gauge probe. And now look how beautiful and easy I can eat this nucleus, okay? I take the PFO out, and now I'm going to perform secondary implantation of IOL. The thing is, here I had a tear, so I lasered it before. It was the only rupture I found when inspecting the periphery. Finished, and let me give a stop here because I have to explain one thing. And this is in the public hospital. In the public hospital, they don't have 3 pieces foldable IOLs, just 5 millimeters or 7 millimeters. And I was tired of opening corneas and suturing and all, and there was always some of astigmatism after that. So I decided by myself to buy foldable 3 pieces IOL. So I bought the MA6AC from Alcon. I docked it in the needle very gently without rushing. I've done it. I leave one of the haptics out to make it easier. But what I didn't know is that these haptics are really fragile. They bend easily. So you're gonna see when I come out, it's already a little bit bent. I make the flange. And now I'm going to deal with the other one. Look how bent is this haptic already. So this IOL will be twisted when I finish the implantation. So to try to solve it, I cut it as Yamane has already shown. He has an aura, I don't, to see the final. So I try to organize it a little bit, I bring it, and when I did it, I have broken the other haptic. So since I am a stubborn guy, I insist with the same IOL. Look how the haptic is, and now it's totally broken. But I'm still really stubborn, and I want to use the same IOL because it's already inside the eye. I dock it again in a 25 gauge needle because it's the only one I have there to make this job. I don't have thin wall needles. And here is the plot. When I'm dealing with it, I don't see the haptic. It's almost broken, and you're gonna see that the IOL is going to fall. But I just saw it later when I was still dealing like a fool with the haptic. Just pay attention in the next seconds how it's gonna happen. Now I hold it, look, went down. And I'm dealing with here, I didn't see it yet. I think I'm holding the IOL. I'm not. I do the flange. When I take it out, it's down. So I go fishing, I get it, I bring it up, then I bring it outside, so there is no more use for this one, so I cut it. I use the Pac-Man technique. I give a good cut until the middle, a little bit farther than the middle. So with another forceps, a curved one, as I like, I bring it out without opening the wound, the incision, sorry. So now I decide to use the basket technique from Dr. Samuel Masket, where we pass double arm wire, okay, like a hashtag, like a net. This technique now has many names. So I do it very gentle. I bury the knot that it's been already previously shown. And then I put the IOL on it. Centered, very good position. I like the technique. You can also capture the haptic if you want. I didn't. And now I'm gonna do a pupilloplasty here. But the thing is, the surgical field is bothering me a little bit. and I have to be really careful. Otherwise, the tip of the needle might cut the purline 10 zeros, which I have already passed. Ideal is 9. I just had 10. So I pass again, and then I go there. I use 4 openings to do it. The regular technique is 3. So I have already passed on the superior part. Now I'm going to the under part. And here again, I was really tired. This patient was tired. This was a surgery more than 2 hours. I do the suture. The iris is not perfect. It should be the pupil. And that's the end of the case. The patient is really happy because he wasn't seeing nothing, and poor guy, a miserable condition. Your comments, guys, whoever wants to talk.
Case, great case. You're really stubborn. You're really stubborn. Yeah.
So just
when you are a retina guy, the thing is, I could have done many steps, many surgeries, but this guy, and I forgot to say you, besides being on a wheelchair, he also has one of the legs amputated because he had osteomyelitis. So I wanted to do everything in a unique surgery and set him free.
Let me ask you, Gustavo, to you and to Christopher, because Christopher showed to do Yamane technique using the 27, plus, and you show using the needles, okay? But at the end, when we think about the channel you create, you don't create a channel really, because you enter and then you go 40, 90 degrees to the center just to see it, because you can't put it in. Then how you manage this? Chris, you use needles, or you always need cannulas, and you, Gustavo, how do you manage this?
So when I plan a Yamane, which is rare, so I showed a Yamane just because that was an interesting case. It was a syndromic eye. It was an anticoagulated patient, and I didn't want to do my usual technique. So my usual technique, if I'm going to put in an IOL and I want it to work, and I want it to be a bulletproof solution that lasts forever. The Yamanes, they're fine when they work, and I showed a case where they work, but honestly, I'll sew in a CZ70 lens with Gore-Tex, with sclerotomies, and those, they last forever. As long as you rotate the knot intraocularly, the Gore-Tex doesn't erode, you don't get into issues and problems. That's a very nice, very stable, long-term result. And I've been doing that since 2003. So I'm going to stick with that.
So answering to your questions, Carlos, there are some issues here I have to explain you. So most of the surgeries I do in the public hospital, they just had until this month. Actually, the surgery was performed 2 days ago. I want to thank Lukan who helped me to edit it because I had a problem with my PC. So going back, we just had 5 millimeters PMMA IOL, okay? So, and the haptics are also from PMMA. They are thicker, okay? And also better to work. So when I do the incision and I do the flange, when I burn the tip, when I push it back, okay, it will be steady. It won't cross the holes, and I cover it with conjunctiva. This surgery I showed you was my first case with the MA60, and it was a disaster. I also like doing, for secondary implantation, the technique which I showed you, the basket from Masked in LA, I think he's in California. And that technique I like really much. The only thing I must change is because I'm using 10 zeros per lean, and you should do it with 9. What I do different from Masked, I don't open the conjunctiva, I do it on the conjunctiva, because after 15 days, it will be epithelialized, so you don't have the knots outside of the conjunctiva. I think Yusuke want to talk about Yamane because they work together or work it together.
So with the Yamane technique, very nice technique. I will show the video later. The key point is, the one key point they use the large side lens. The total lens should be more than 13 millimeter. And as shown here, the Alcon Arctic lens is too small and haptic too fragile. So initially, I also tried to use the same technique with this lens, but also failed several times. So that's the reason why we gave up. They will no longer use this type of lens. We now use the very specialized large size lens for this technique. And the one key point I'll show you here is, I'll show you the video.
Sorry, Yusuke, which IOL are you using now?
Which one?
Which IOL are you using for
Right now I use the Sun 10 IOL.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Otherwise, you can use otherwise you can also the AMO you can use the side because the side. Another one key point is I will show you the video.
While Yusuke charged his video, Carlos, the thing is, I bought it by myself. No, not yet.
Can you see the video? No.
No.
Gustavo,
let me check.
we know that there's a lot of variants of the shamanic techniques, but today I prefer to do a scleral pocket for the optic. I think it's safer, but that's an opinion.
No, sure.
Question for you, for all of you. My question is, you have a luxated lens in the eye. The lens is perfect. You'll have the back down and you don't have any supporting anterior. What do you prefer? You prefer to exchange the lens or to try to re-engage the lens?
Actually, Lukan has the answer, but I want to talk first. The masked technique was invented because an IOL was inside the eye and he didn't want to change it. So you can bring it up, do the net, and now, as I have many Alcon IOLs, I'll have to improve this technique and try to make the optic capture to button it. Lukan, go ahead.
I completely agree with the question of Dr. Mateo. I research whatever lens is inside if the lens is okay. So why I should open the eye, remove it, and then to sclerosuture something else.
With all the risk to
Of
open
course,
up
of course.
hemorrhages and all of this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes also an economic issue.
Sure, of course.
Yusuke, can you share your screen?
So I try to show you, but I can find it right now. I just wait a moment. Just wait a couple minutes. I could embed
Okay,
it.
we keep talking. Chris, want to say something?
So there's also one thing that we all have to remember. Nobody ever went blind from aphakia, right? So, I mean, I understand a sick old guy that may not have the money for contact lenses. I understand why you did what you did, but in many cases like this, the drive to do everything with one surgery may not be what's best for the patient.
I agree.
This is a traumatized eye. Take out the lens, let it settle down. Don't beat the heck out of the endothelium. Don't beat the heck out of the iris. Leave the eye aphakic and then live to fight another day if you need to, or just give them a contact lens. Contact lens, I'm a huge fan of the CZ70, the PMMA 7mm lens. I agree strongly with what Yusuke said. I like large optics. I like large haptic cord lengths. The downside to the 7mm lens is you have to make a scleral tunnel 7mm, and then you have to sew that tunnel shut. I'm old. I have gray hair. I learned how to cut, and I learned how to sew. So I feel very comfortable doing that, and the results are fantastic. And you can do that surgery very atraumatically if you know how to sew and if you know how to cut.
Yeah, Chris, before Yusuke plays his video, I agree with you 200%. It was a special situation, but you have to give the eye the time to rest and to recover. If it was a regular patient in a regular situation, I would have done it in 2 or 3 steps maybe. The only thing I want to point, pupilloplasty, I passed the iris around the needle I should have passed more times because I passed like 5 times between each stop, and you should do it 6 or 7 times. Okay, Yusuke?
Can I see the video?
Yes.
Yes.
I just show you here. This right now I just just show you here. I just insert the one haptics into needle, right? Yeah, just put it in it and leave it as is. Don't pull right at this point. Don't move it. And then don't care about it inside. It will not touch the retina. And then leave it as is, and then you can do another hold another haptics, like here. If you put it once you pull the one side, it's not easy to insert another one. Just like you will twist the haptics to make it broken. So then just leave the haptics inside as is, and then insert another needle here, and then guide it. Like this way. So you may keep with not easy to broken the haptics right here. And then the key point is rotate the lens at the same time. Rotate the haptics at the same time, right here. And gently move it, and keep this position. And take out one haptics, and immediately make the front. Keep it there outside, and then gently move another one side. So we have less chance to broken the haptics. And right now you can gently adjust the position, rotate it back, adjust position.
No, but these haptics are similar to Lucia, right? To size.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, they are totally different. The Alcon, the first touch I gave on it, they were full.
Yeah, the Alcon one is not easy to use for this procedure. So use a much more thickened haptics, maybe not easier to. And then you can cut off the haptic and adjust the size and the position. Very easy.
I continue not seeing clear why you have to maintain the needle in your left hand. This is one question, because at the end, if you remove one of the ends, you do the flange and you put it as you are doing now, then
if you put this way, put it outside first, then just the lens already. Oh, just wait a moment. I'll keep it stop. So if you want to remove it outside here, that means another haptics will become this way.
Yes.
Right. So it's not easy to take it back to insert to the needle.
Yeah.
You may easily broken the haptics and it twist the haptics to insert the another side. So So keep it this way and then insert this way. Don't load it so fast. And after you adjust insert the two needles inside, and then rotate it this way, rotate at the same time, you may have less chance to broken the haptics.
And the second thing, I use sequentially. I remove one first, the second one. And the second question, Yusuke, which is the haptic that is more difficult to insert? And I think is in your video is the right one. The needle is facing you, and why not to put this, haptic first, and then you go to the inferior haptic. That this is.
Yeah, of course you can do that one. Of course you can do. Just depend on the surgeon preference. For me, to insert this first one, my adjustment is much easier. Of course you can do the opposite side. Of course, it's just up to you. The one point is I just instructed by Yamane. My colleagues told me rotate at the same time, but easier to keep the point and keep the position and have less chance to encounter the haptics.
Answering to your question, Mateo, for sure the second haptic is more difficult. And Dr. Brian Kim from USA, he has an interesting technique. He does a paracentesis on the farthest side. So he put the first haptic out, then the proximal one, he crosses it, and then he works with the first haptic. I think that's a good technique.
Yeah, Gustavo, but I would mention this because what I do is to take profit that the lens is inside. Then if it's inside, then it's better first to do as Kim do it, inserting a new lens. First, the haptic and the inferior haptic.
Oh, I agree. Yes. And like you, I don't like to have two needles inside the lens. That's the first one, I do the flange and then the second one.
I think. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I don't know if I can speak or not, because I have
Yes, you
my,
can. Of course.
okay, I have my telephone now working. There are two issues for the people who are not used to that. The issue they think every lens can get in and every needle is the same. No, the needle should be a wide bore needle, and you need to give directions which needle you're using. It's not for every needle to do that. And the lens should have a strong haptic and tough enough to withstand the entering of the eye, because so many needles are not good for this, so many haptics that we have in every lens. So we need to have some instructions that this is good, this is not, like we did before. And people think that you're holding the left, the one haptic with the needle in front of you, and you're holding it, and then you use the other haptic to grab the needle. No, you just leave the haptic inside, you leave the needle inside, and you get your two hands in order to get a handshake technique to leave there. And the most difficult thing is to lift the lens before going downwards. Because if you leave one haptic inside and you go for the other, the lens, because it's heavy, it's going down. So I love Yoshima's technique that he went behind the lens, lift it up first, then grasp it, then doing the handshake. So there are steps that you have to follow one by one if you want to learn to use this technique. If you want to use another technique, that's another issue. But for this technique, I fully agree that the Yamani have to have steps and issues that they are not familiar with everybody. And I also agree with Mateo, that's another story to reposition a lens that already is dropped inside. It's something that you don't have choices. And another thing to put the lens inside the eye when you as a secondary implantation. This is two different things.
Lukan?
My talk will be completely different. Can I tease you with few images of intraoperative fluorovitrectomy and
Of course, bring the images. We are here to learn with each other, please.
so just a second.
But yes, then as Athanasios mentioned, the handshake technique for these situations is amazing. It works really well.
What happened now? Okay. Yeah, this is a video which I believe will be perfect.
We have the sun, but we didn't see anything.
You don't see anything?
No?
Okay. So I will be
Desktop.
just...
Yeah. Open the
Okay.
video first and then you share screen.
Can you see the picture now?
No?
Your desktop.
Yeah, but this is the picture over the desktop. Can you see?
There are some videos there and a folder.
Wow, sorry.
You see, you can tilted one disk.
Yeah, this is one of the pictures.
A picture, yes, but it's not seen. You have in another desktop, perhaps. This is a Mac.
Yeah, exactly.
And perhaps you have another screen. You have two screens.
No, it's one, but let me check again.
Yeah, I think you have to open the picture first and then share screen. Zoom is a little bit lazy. Today is Saturday.
Okay, let's see now. No.
I enjoyed that the technology of
Do you see the image?
Yes, now yes.
Oh, okay. So this is how the fluorescein can help actually when you play with your filters in the Ingenuity. Probably
This
the
is
images are...
vitrectomy, Lukan.
What?
This is the fluo vitrectomy.
As I call it, it's part of the chromovitrectomy, but it's good because it is like for fluoro one. Let me just show one picture. Just a second. Here I had somewhere a glowing.
Well, we are not seeing just your desktop.
Again. Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
So stop sharing, open it, and then share again.
So I'll jump in while he's doing that. I think that we're just looking at the tip of the iceberg with chromovitrectomy, with fluorobitrectomy, and those sorts of things. And I think the thing that we have to understand is, so I've been in the operating room with several of my colleagues using Ingenuity, and what they think looks good, sometimes I don't think looks good, and what I think looks good, they don't think looks good. We all see color a little bit differently, and the really nice and powerful thing about Ingenuity is I think we're going to be moving in the direction of customizing the screen settings and the display of color, the color palette, the color space, customizing that to the way each and every one of us sees color. I had a trainee several years ago that had a subtle red-green color defect. And this poor kid had difficulty peeling ILM because he couldn't see the green, which we use here. So, now I'm pretty sure he's using blue, but we were able to shift the color palette on Ingenuity and display and take the entire hue more towards the blue end of the spectrum, and all of a sudden he could see what was obvious to me, but was not obvious to him. He could see it, and then he turned into a fantastic surgeon. So, in each and every one of us sees color a little bit differently, and I'm encouraging our friends developing 3D systems to dive into that with a little bit more attention to detail, because I think there's real value that we can uncover there for surgeons and for patients.
Lukan, try to share your picture now, please.
No, I give up, and Christopher said everything completely right. We need to adjust the image to our preference, not to use the preset values. And the good thing with the Ingenuity now is that they have a preset modes, but you can create your own modes and to play with color channels, hue, saturation, exposure, etc.
Yeah, very good. Another thing is that 8% of the male population has some kind of daltonism in different degrees. So we all see colors different, okay? Women can see 100 million colors, but we have some limitations on our color vision.
100, something like this.
Okay.
Each one of us has a different wavelength peak. Each one of us. If you can measure the wavelength peak, yours is different than mine. So if you can adjust the peak of the wavelength in your Ingenuity with yours, you're going to have the better vision. Then it comes chromovitrectomy. Then it comes different things of focusing and refocusing again. But all these things, don't tell them all together. Because if somebody wants to use the Ingenuity, they would say, do I have to be an expert on color, on dyes, on everything to do a surgery? Don't go too technological about things, because you can do 99% of things without thinking about this. This is improvement, but don't stop people thinking that we make things complicated for them because we don't want them to participate in what we are doing. Okay, don't stop them from coming.
Oh, you are saying Ingenuity is like democracy. When you have too many options, you make a mess. That's it?
No, you just tell them that you cannot get into the club. It's too difficult to get to the club because you have to know chromovitrectomy, you have to know this, you have to know that. And this is like a beautiful telephone. There is a lot of things you can do with it, but there are some people who know just to call people. They don't do anything else. So if you want to, for example, your iPhone 11, I don't know any one of you or me or anybody else who knows what you can do with it. You can change your TV screen, you can open your car, you can regulate your air conditioning, but who's doing that?
True, totally true. So guys, it's almost midnight in Japan. Yusuke has operated the whole day. It's time to finish. People are tired. So first of all, Hudson, 30 seconds for your considerations.
It was my honor again to be with you. I learned a lot, and great case. It's a really tough case. I thought my case was a little tough, but not as much as yours, with these ILM pills and everything. And I really learned a lot, enjoyed a lot, especially cases from everybody. And for me, I would vote Hassan for the best case because this RPE transplantation was cool. Thank you very much for having me.
Obrigado, Hudson. Gastón, your last considerations, 30 seconds, please. You're muted, Gastón.
Thanks for the invitation. Terrific webinar. Thank Lukan, thank Gustavo, thank all the panelists here. Very good.
Athanasios?
I think that the most important thing is that you met with Mishev. The cocktail of Mishev and honey is extraordinary. You're doing everything that no one of us can do. So keep doing it and all the way because you have a lot of future in front of you. We just have to show you experience. And last question is to Mortada. How many patients per year is he doing vitrectomies?
Mortada, how many?
How many patients I'm doing?
Yeah, every year.
Every year? Don't tell the taxes. No taxes included. It's around 800. 800 vitrectomy. Okay. Not including silicone oil or diabetic.
How many? How many cases every year? How many cases? Not vitrectomy. How many cases every year?
How many cases? No, I only cut vitrectomy, so I only.
Now you know how you have so much experience, more experience than anyone else.
I'm doing a lot of surgery, just like every one of you. So.
No. We don't. We just extend to the Greek population, which is just a small hotel.
Sorry, just on your on the comment before you said before. We are drinking from the fountain, so you guys, all guys here have the credits, okay? Thank you so much. Evharisto, Elada. Oshima, 30 seconds, your last comments.
Oh, thank you very much for inviting me to this nice meeting. Very glad to see the old friend and new friends. And right now here at midnight, a little bit sleepy, but very worth to join the meeting. I learned a lot from you guys. Thank you very much for your guide. Enjoy.
Arigatou gozaimashita. Chris?
So thank you for a great meeting. Thank you for organizing this. Thank you all for fantastic presentations, fantastic cases. I always learn more than I teach at these because all of you are a lot smarter than I am. Two things to just kind of hit home for the audience. I think that don't be afraid to remember that sometimes what's old is new and what's new is old. We talked about buckling today, and buckling has really fallen out of favor, and there are many training programs that don't even teach scleral buckling. That's a mistake. If you're training residents and training fellows, take a couple of pig eyes, shoot them with a BB gun, and in the lab and have them sew the corneas together. You have to know how to sew, have them do some nice scleral groove and tunnel incisions and learn how to do that. It's not that hard. If you can peel internal limiting membrane, if you can suture secondary IOLs, if you can do RPE transplants and all sorts of amazing, crazy things like that, then you can make a scleral groove and tunnel incision like they did in the extra cap days 40 years ago, and you can do that well. And you can learn how to sew and close a wound. So that's what I would say. Please remember, what's old is new, and that'll help you. I have to sign off. Thank you, everyone. It was a joy.
Thank you so much.
Thank
That
you.
was a bullseye. We even had today 20 gauge surgery, so it was nice. Mortada, please, 30 seconds, your last comments.
Thank you all for such beautiful, interesting cases. I really learned a lot from you, and I can see that you are all committed to your work. You love your work, and without this commitment and work and love to the work, we cannot continue working on these difficult and complicated cases, spending a lot of hours from our lives doing in the operating room, trying to do the best for our patients. So it is a great opportunity to see you all, and I hope to see you in real soon.
Shukran Ahuya. Carlos Mateo, your last comments.
Say more things, you said everything. Thank you for having me here. I enjoyed a lot, and the discussion and everything. Thank you very much, and stay safe.
Gracias. Lukan?
I just want to thank to everybody attending this webinar. It was an honor, and your presence here was miraculous. Thank you. I learned a lot.
So thank you all. I'm sorry, we were expecting to do at maximum 2 hours, and we had 3 hours of webinar. I'm sorry for that, but discussion is always great, and we lost ourselves in discussion. Have a nice weekend, guys. Take care, be safe, be healthy, and I hope to see you soon in person. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.